Push before the big vote next week, but the Ontario NDP hit another snag on the campaign trail.
I don't know what spirits in the world are preventing me from getting up north.
Why Andrea Horwath had to cancel a tour of the North again, plus the push from other parties to woo voters, and the science behind a song. We break down Doug Ford's Get It Done campaign tune. And 1 week after a storm tore through Ontario, killing 10 people, cleanup continues and some are still without power.
This is CBC Saturday News.
The NDP was supposed to be touring across northern Ontario, but once again, things hit a bit of a snag. Lorenda Redekop is traveling with the party this weekend and has more.
This was supposed to be Andrea Horwath reviving her northern tour, but due to mechanical issues with the private plane that they had rented, it couldn't happen. This is the second time that tour is canceled. No doubt there has to be some disappointment with that. You may remember that the first time that the NDP campaign tried to go up north, it was canceled because Andrea Horwath tested positive for COVID. My colleague from Radio-Canada asked her about her luck with trying to get up north.
Did you break a mirror or something?
I've been asking myself that same question. I don't know what spirits in the world are preventing me from getting up north. But as we were talking earlier, I really regret it. I have a lot of respect for Northerners, and I know that they often feel neglected and ignored.
So instead, Horwath did two separate Zoom news conferences, both from this location near Pearson Airport. The first was connecting with her candidate in Sault Ste. Marie. That's seen as a tight race. It was focused on health care and getting more nurses in Northern Ontario. The second connecting to Thunder Bay, and that one was about the opioid crisis and the NDP promise for a 40-bed facility in that area. Liberal leader Stephen Del Duca also had multiple appearances today. In his first, he talked about his promise for a handgun ban in Ontario.
An Ontario Liberal government will move forward quickly to partner with the federal government to ban handguns in the province of Ontario. Ontario, under an Ontario Liberal government, will actually lead on the national conversation for a national handgun ban.
The federal Liberal government has promised money to any provinces who promise to do this. The Green Party leader, he was in Parry Sound, Muskoka again today. That's seen as a tight race between the Greens and the PCs. And the Greens are hoping to elect their second ever MPP in that riding. Today, PC leader Doug Ford has no appearances, and that's such a different strategy versus what we're seeing with the NDP and the Liberals. Last night, he had a rally, and he's going to be holding another rally tomorrow night. This campaign, it's headed not to the north, but instead to Windsor and then through southwestern Ontario. Lorenda Redekop, CBC News, Toronto.
And just a reminder, tonight is your last chance to cast a ballot in advanced polls. They're open until 8 p.m. Well, some parents of children with autism took their voices to the street today ahead of next week's vote. Delia Ashery has more on the province-wide day of action.
Parents of children with autism rallied across the province this afternoon, from London to Sault Ste. Marie to Ottawa.
Doug Ford has got to go!
Derek Crow is the father of 10-year-old Elliot.
We're dishing out close to $20,000 a year.
He's angry about the year-long wait list for services that his son requires.
When it comes down to making relationships with other kids, he has a number of difficulties. And so we need support, professional advice as to how to best meet the needs of him.
A dozen parents of children with autism and advocates expressed their frustration in North York this afternoon, just blocks away from the office of PC candidate Robin Martin.
I was lucky enough when I was a lot younger to get services, but there are so many kids who, even in the best cases, were diagnosed around the age of 2, and they might be waiting till ages 5 or 6 to even be considered for services.
The Tories tried to roll out a new autism program in 2019 with the aim of clearing the wait list, but scrapped it after parents protested because it was age-based rather than needs-based. The PC party says their new program is needs-based with a budget of $600 million a year. In a statement to CBC from the office of Progressive Conservative leader Doug Ford, they said, quote, "Today, roughly 40,000 children and youth with autism are receiving support through multiple streams. That's nearly 5 times more than any point under the Del Duca Wynne government." The Ontario Autism Coalition is asking voters to hold the government accountable.
This government has caused at least a 4-year delay in children accessing autism services, and that's a lifetime for our children. These children will never reach their full potential as a result of that.
So if I think that a learner needs 10 hours a week of help, but the family can only afford to pay for 3, there's a big gap there for how that learner gets help.
If elected, the NDP pledges to boost the program's budget by an additional $125 by 2024 to 2025.
Because Doug Ford has destabilized the system so much, those services can hardly even be accessed because so many people have left the field.
And with days away from the election,
we also would like to know that there's somebody out there in the provincial government supporting us.
Dahlia Ashry, CBC News, Toronto.
Let's head south of the border next, where 2 communities are in mourning after horrific gun violence. In Buffalo, a funeral honored the oldest victim from that supermarket shooting.
Enough is enough. God bless you.
Ruth Whitfield was one of 9 people killed on May 14th. Then this past week saw that mass shooting at an elementary school in Uvalde, Texas. Yesterday's stunning admission that police mishandled their response by not immediately engaging with the gunman has caused so much more anguish. The governor of Texas has ordered a full investigation. Closer to home now, hundreds marched in support of the family of Regis Korchenski-Paquette, the 29-year-old who died 2 years ago.
I think the family feels supported. I think the family recognizes that the community is also devastated with the history and the unfortunate death of Ms. Korchenski-Paquette. And I think that what you're going to see moving forward is a continued support, because answers and accountability is necessary in these circumstances.
The walk ended at 100 High Park Avenue, where Regis fell from a balcony on the 24th floor. She died on May 27, 2020, only 2 days after the death of George Floyd, sparking significant protests in Toronto against anti-Black and anti-Indigenous racism. An SIU investigation cleared the officers involved of any wrongdoing. Her family, though, says they are still searching for answers. Meantime, a Toronto woman was killed in an early morning fire.
Our firefighters were met with heavy smoke conditions. They were able to quickly extinguish the fire, contain the fire to the unit of origin, and during our primary search, we discovered 1 victim inside of the unit. Unfortunately, that victim has been pronounced deceased.
It happened on the 8th floor of this building on Victoria Park Drive. Toronto Fire says crews were able to put out the blaze quickly, but found a woman in the unit. An investigation now underway looking into the cause. The age and identity of the woman has not yet been released. Well, it was 1 week ago that storm tore through Ontario. Cleanup is still underway tonight. Thousands are still in the dark. Natalia Goodwin has more.
City crews and volunteers across Ottawa are out in full force today, scooping up trees, chopping up logs, and hauling away tons and tons of debris. The many piles of downed trees and broken branches reveal just how much was lost to last week's storm. For some nearby residents, the damage hit home, literally.
We've had significant damage to our home. There was a tree that came through the kitchen ceiling right down to my countertop. The front corner here of the house has been damaged severely. There's been damage to the foundation of the house, and some holes, you know, we don't really know the full extent yet.
It's a similar picture on the other side of town. Scenes like this one have meant big hassles for homeowners, but it's also meant big business for those in the cleanup industry who say they've been run off their feet for the last week and that the work isn't drying up anytime soon.
We're going to be busy probably for a few months because there are still some trees that are hazardous, that maybe, you know, there's branches hanging in other trees, there's leaners towards the house, they didn't fall yet. So it's going to be a long time before we get on top of this.
As the cleanup happens outside homes, inside, many are still in the dark. Nearly 20,000 households still without power. 7 days now and running for some.
Every night we hope that maybe in the middle of the night, the light will flash on me, so I keep the bedroom ceiling light on. That would be a nice surprise. That did not happen, yes.
The city says it's all hands on deck to get it done. Hydro Ottawa says this final phase is complex.
For those people who've been without power for 6 days or so, it's very, very frustrating, and we empathize with them. There's no question about that. You know, we thought we could get close to 99% of the folks hooked back up to electricity by yesterday at midnight. We didn't reach that goal. We're now at about 90%.
17 emergency centers are remaining open all weekend. Natalia Goodwin, CBC News, Ottawa.
Sophia's here now. We relied so much on your expertise last week. Just some numbers from Hydro One quickly, Sophia. They managed to restore power to 720,000 customers. Wow. Right after the storms. There was 1,900 broken poles, and we know just countless downed trees and power lines right across the province.
Yeah, we talked a little bit about the downed trees last weekend as well, and I gotta reiterate that had we seen the same storm in midsummer, we wouldn't have seen half the amount of trees felled. Having a spring storm where the root systems are wet and heavy and saturated, think about pulling weeds out of a yard right after a rain. It's so much easier to fell trees. Meanwhile, still states of emergency in places like Uxbridge and in Peterborough. You know about the confirmed EF2 tornado there in Uxbridge, the downburst at an EF2 rating in Ottawa. But just to end off the work week now, 2 new confirmed embedded tornado paths in London. There was a ton of damage there, especially in the northeast end. You know, a loss of an apartment roof, a flipped over plane, a lot of damage, as you mentioned, all the way really from Windsor to Montreal. Luckily, the forecast for the next 24 hours or so will be conducive for cleanup efforts. Seasonal and a mix of sun and cloud, but come Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, the heat will really be turned on, and hopefully the air conditioners will be running across the province as well, because we will have forecast temperatures in the 30s and humidex values in the mid-30s. I'll tell you how long the heat lasts when we come up in the long range, Shannon.
Okay, thanks, Sophia.
You're welcome.
Over to Caledon next, where people hopped on their bikes this afternoon for the 13th annual Jack Ride. The event is put on by jack.org and is Canada's largest cycling fundraiser for youth mental health. More than 1,300 people participated both virtually and in person today. The group says they raised almost $1.8 million from the event. Those proceeds go towards preventing youth suicide, which they say is the leading health-related cause of death for young people. Jack.org also says most young people don't get the support they need, a trend they're hoping to reverse. A scene unfolded at Pearson Airport today that could have fooled onlookers.
So today we're having a mock emergency exercise happening. So we're testing our response to an emergency or security situation. So we've got protesters in the back who have been very enthusiastic about playing their roles, and we've been testing our response to it.
Yes, as you can see, people, both volunteers and airport employees, getting into character for the fake protest. The exercise is actually a requirement by Transport Canada. The GTAA says it's an important way to test the airport's emergency response.
The voting has begun. Ontario is going to elect its 43rd government on June 2nd. Join me, Dwight Drummond, on election night for Ontario Votes 2022. We will have live coverage as the results roll in, there will be a special stream with ASL translation and closed captioning. Tune in election night. Our coverage begins at 8 p.m. on CBC Television and CBC News Network. See you then.
Welcome back. Some residents in Thorncliffe Park say if their landlord's proposed rent hike gets the green light, they could be forced out of their homes. Dale Manukduk takes us there.
These residents are facing a 4.2% rent increase. For many, it amounts to some $600 per year.
It's either going to be a choice of food or rent, and I'd like to have both.
I have 3 kids going to school. One is university. I'm the only provider.
The buildings are located in densely populated, low-income Thorncliffe Park.
We uncover opportunities to deliver superior returns.
They're owned by one of the biggest landlords in the country, Starlight Investments, who own more than 60,000 rental units in Canada and over 300 buildings in Ontario. In a statement to CBC News, Starlight points to structural and safety improvements and recognizes the challenge presented to vulnerable residents, and that while the recognition should not dissuade one from pursuing the work the building requires and seeking to recover a small portion of these significant expenditures as the system allows, it does demand that one act with compassion and concern for those struggling to overcome economic challenges. Ontario's maximum increase for rent for 2022 is 1.2%. However, landlords can apply for an increase above those guidelines called an AGI. One of the criteria is to have eligible expenses like repairs or renovations, but some believe that's just a loophole.
Unfair kind of loophole that landlords can exploit in the legislation that allows them to raise rents well above the cost of living, even though they don't need that money.
We are fighting for you. Yes. You have to unite with us and force Starlight to stop the rent hike.
Residents say that the balconies and common areas were improved and don't believe the burden of cost should be passed on to them. The issue goes beyond Starlight.
These firms are structurally organized to prioritize profit making for their shareholders and for their senior executives. And so they're really aggressively pursuing profits from rental housing in ways that are new and extreme and that affect tenants.
The current application from Starlight is still before the Landlord and Tenant Board. If approved, residents would owe the increased rent retroactively as of May 1st. Dale Manukduk, CBC News, Toronto.
As we all know, the provincial election is just days away now. So here's a question. When you think of the leaders and the parties, does a certain song come to mind? It may not seem like the most effective way to woo voters, but some music experts say it is. Lisa Shing explains.
If you've been following the election campaign in Ontario, you might find yourself humming along to this song. Blasting over the speakers as PC leader Doug Ford arrives at appearances. It's also in ads on TV, radio, and online.
Oh, that's where I heard the commercial. I was like, yes, I've heard it, remember?
And the reviews from people we asked are generally pretty positive.
Is it catchy? I think it's very energetic. What do you think?
It's great.
You like
yeah,
it?
It's super cool, yeah.
What do you like about it?
It's poppy, it's got a good vibe to it. It sounds very positive.
It felt hopeful. I like the energy in it.
Yeah, I needed those words of encouragement, you know? Like you can get it done.
It's just a little too fake. Like the messaging in the song seems way too fake.
It's for their advertising. They play it when Doug Ford makes an appearance.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think that's fitting, the way that the music seemed to me.
Regardless of political stripes, the Get It Done campaign song specifically commissioned by the Progressive Conservatives for this election is well crafted, according to this Toronto musician.
That opening is so catchy too. And that heavy percussion, it's like the hammer and the anvil, right? It really kind of gives you that we're working and they're working hard. I think it's a pretty universal message on that. I would say it's got an appeal, a very wide appeal.
An appeal and also a purpose. It's designed to send a clear yet subtle message to more than just Ford supporters.
Campaign songs are really powerful in that they evoke emotion in people. It's the language of we can get it done, or I'm always fighting for you. And we're still still in a pandemic and people are still feeling really isolated, probably really frustrated, really upset. And the language, let's get it done, is almost synonymous with, we're tired of this. Let's get the pandemic over with. That's a very strategic communication tool.
The PCs won't tell us who composed the song or how much it cost. Regardless, if a song can tap into a person's emotions, it can be very powerful and priceless. Lisa Shing, CBC News, Toronto.
Doors Open is back this weekend, which means it's your chance to check out some of Toronto's landmark buildings for free, places like Toronto's first post office.
We're actually very lucky because in the 1970s, this post office was almost torn down. The community came together to save it and to form the Town of York Historical Society and form this museum.
So this is just one of 100 different sites open to the public today and tomorrow. And for those who want to explore from the comfort of their own homes, there's a virtual option too. Sophia is back and bringing the heat with the forecast.
Yeah, summer-like weather for all these big summer-like events that are coming back to town. We talked about the heat incoming. Here's how it plays out over the next few days. Mid-20s for Sunday, high 20s for Monday, and 30s right across the board for Tuesday, right into Wednesday. Storm risk as well. Wednesday will bring us eventually back down to seasonal. But for Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday, the Humidex will follow suit in the mid to high 30s. Right now, though, we have a few minutes to brace ourselves. This evening, we're at seasonal. If you're heading out to the TFC game, what about the fireworks at Niagara Falls? Just put on a light jacket for the overnight period. Clouds will be out. We have been braced for this, though, folks. We've been mostly above normal for much of this month, but really, it's been a while since we've actually been above the 30-degree mark officially. It was last August of 2021 when we hit 31.5. Well, the date and the forecast will follow suit for Monday, May the 30th, for the 31st, and for June the 1st. The timing of actually hitting this 30, though, will depend on the rising instability that will eventually give way to a midweek, midday Wednesday storm. If it comes through a little earlier than planned, then you might not hit that 30 for Wednesday. But that cold front will bring us back down to earth and back down to seasonal and give way to this big ridge of high pressure. Will be comfortable temperatures for nature's air conditioning for the second half of this upcoming work week. So lots of fun to look forward to. A Splashworks at Wonderland is well open. Will be good timing for next week's. Shannon?
Perfect timing for that. Thanks, Sophia.
You're welcome.
That's our show for tonight. Thank you so much for watching. We'll see you again tomorrow night at 11.